Thank you for joining Trinity Tabernacle, where we teach, preach, and live the gospel.
And today we're going to talk about being equally yoked.
Amen.
2 Corinthians chapter 6, beginning at verse 14, and it reads, "Do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common?" To fully understand what we're discussing, we need to discuss what the word yoke is. Yokes are used or were used by farmers to plow the ground. So they would grab two animals that were the same kind of animal and usually the same size animal, and they would bind this device around their neck that would cause them to walk in a straight or parallel line. So it was where one side of the ground wouldn't be unevenly tilled and the other densely tilled. They used two equal animals. So they didn't use a cow and a horse. They didn't use an ox and a cow. They used two equal animals to plow the ground. And the reason for using it was very strategic. It was because they wanted it level. They wanted it even. So being equally yoked means you want the same type of animal on the side of the fence. So it doesn't matter if that is your job. It doesn't matter if that's your spouse. It doesn't matter if it's a friendship. It doesn't matter even if it's a hobby or something you participate in. Whatever occupies your time, you want to make sure that it is equally yoked with you because you are binding yourself with that thing. So we need to understand that even though the animals all serve a purpose, because they are built different, and someone's going to get free today from this message, but because they are built different, they don't have the same purpose. There could be two Christians walking together, but because your purpose may be one thing and their purpose is another, you may not be equally yoked. That doesn't mean that's not your brother or your sister and you can't love them and have a relationship with them. But we need people who are equally yoked with us to go to the next level. That means they have to be in the same pursuit and desire and chasing God the way you are. Some of us are babies in our faith. Some of us are more mature in our faith, and some of us are actively running and pursuing. We don't feel like we have it all, which none of us should, amen. But we want to make sure that if we are actively pursuing God, that we aren't entertaining things that are pulling our attention away from it, because then we are unequally yoked. It is unbalanced, and my mother used to always tell us, either you're going to pull them up or they're going to pull you down. So you want to make sure that in every area of your life you are equally yoked, so that your strength is not used prematurely. When there's an equal yoke, both people carry the load. If you're as cows plow the ground or whatever, oxen plow the ground, not one is usually not stronger than the other. But if one is stronger than the other, then the stronger one is going to tire out because it is doing all the work. A lot of times we get bound by things unintentionally because we didn't consult with God first. We ask Him to come in and clean up the mess, but we didn't invite Him in when we were making the decision, when we were making the choice. But the Word of God declares that in all of our ways, we are to acknowledge Him and that He would direct our path. So that means while you're still in the thinking stage, while you're still contemplating, when it is still just a thought, that you bring it to Him and you say, Father, what do you think about this? You show me what it is you want me to do with this thing that you have brought into my life, or this situation that you have presented. Tell me what it is that you would like me to do. We're unequally yoked in our relationships. We're unequally yoked in our careers. We're unequally yoked in our finances. We have more bills than we have money. And a lot of times we put there's a common saying that if God brought me to it, but we throw that around saying if God brought me to it, he'll bring me through it. And God is like, I didn't bring you to that. Your lust brought you to that relationship. Your greed brought you to that career. That now you can't even serve me because you are too tired to get up and go to church on Sunday because you're working all day Saturday. Your desires brought you that. A lot of times as parents, we can, because we've lived a little bit, we can see things that our children can't. We can tell our children, that girl ain't your friend. That boy don't mean you no good. We can do that with our children because we know, we've seen a few things. That's the same thing that God says to us. This isn't for you. That job is not for you. This friendship is not for you. That doesn't mean that you can't have friends that are unbelievers. I want to be really clear. That does not mean that, because how does an unbeliever get saved if all he has is unbelieving friends? So it does not mean you can't be friends with them, but you can't be bound with them. You cannot be yoked with them. When people are in relationships, you see one person and oftentimes you see the other. So you start putting their names together. As soon as we see Erica, we say, oh, how's Dan? And vice versa. So we want to make sure that when our names come up, the right name comes with it. It's paired with it. That we aren't yoking ourselves together with people or things that have nothing to do with the image of Christ. Let's look for a moment at King Solomon, who was considered to be the wisest man ever, the wisest king ever, the son of David. He inherited all these things, and then God asked him, what do you want? What do you want from me? And because he asked for wisdom, because he was young and he was going to step into this position of power, he asked for wisdom. And God said, not only am I going to give you wisdom, but I'm going to give you all this other stuff too. So he gives it to him. And think about who he was and how he displayed his great wisdom. The women, the two harlots with the babies, one had God, and how he wisely made a judgment considering the living baby. You think about that, but even in all his wisdom, even in all of that, he still was deceived because he was unequally yoked. Solomon had 700 wives, 300 in waiting. They were concubines. But he had all these women around him, and God told him that he was not to intermarry. He wasn't supposed to mix. And he did. And he ended up accepting their gods. Their truth and their beliefs became his truth and his beliefs. So what happened after that? His kingdom fell when it was passed on to his sons. All because he was unequally yoked. The Bible declares that above all things we are to guard our heart, because everything flows from